I'm going to talk about the craziest regimen I've ever done in my life. Basically, it was between the time I won the California overall to the time I was competing in the USA's and I placed 7th.
Rich Piana. If you've never heard of him, well, you've heard of him now. The most obvious thing about him is that he is an absolute unit of a man. A former professional bodybuilder, he would eventually pivot to online social media, as well as starting up his own line of fitness products, which was dubbed 5% Nutrition. And at first glance you might think that he's just another meathead, but Rich stood out from the crowd even among the bodybuilding community for a few reasons. For one thing, it was just fun to listen to him talk. He was very extroverted in his personality, very sociable, very loud, and very direct with all his content. You always felt like he was talking to you as just another one of the guys. And perhaps more than anything else, the thing about Rich that endeared him to a lot of people online was his honesty. Rich was not a perfect person at all, but unlike a lot of other bodybuilders, he never hid those parts of himself. Particularly when it comes to steroid use. Doubtless, it's happened more than once, online bodybuilders have been outed for their use of illicit substances in order to improve their physique, with consequences of course, but they've done it. But they lied about it. The most recent example I can think of is the Liver King, who, despite building his entire platform off of the notion that he was using this weird diet that consisted of a lot of raw organs from various animals, in reality, he was just on the juice. But Rich was different. Yes, he did get that physique through steroids. He didn't do it the natural way, but he never lied about it. He always maintained that, yeah, I've used them. Also, you probably shouldn't. It was very much against, especially young people just starting out, using steroids, and he would explain that if you have the option to go the natural route, do that. Do not use the roids. Because as someone who had used them for multiple decades, he knew about their effects, what they do to you, as well as the long-term consequences. It was this frankness, this down-to-earth honesty, that helped him build his platform and become a popular figure online. Richard Eugene Piana was born in Glendale, California on September 25th, 1970. He was raised by his mom in Sacramento, California, and his interest in bodybuilding developed from an early age due to his mother. She, herself, was a female bodybuilder, and Rich thought the training was really cool and he wanted to start doing it. At the age of 11, he began lifting weights, and at the age of 15, he would start competing in bodybuilding contests. In 1989, he would win the National Physique Committee, or NPC, Mr. Teen California title, his first victory, though he wouldn't get another victory until 1998, also with the NPC. He would again win in 2003 and in 2009. But his experience with actual professional bodybuilding wound up being a lot different from what he initially thought. Bodybuilding as a whole portrays itself as a very healthy lifestyle. You're working out, you're doing cardio, you're staying in great shape, just fantastic shape, phenomenal shape, peak physical condition. But the truth is that it's really hard, takes a lot of energy, a lot of time, a lot of money, can be very stressful, and by Rich's own admission, basically requires you to take steroids. It's not something that's outright said in any official capacity, but there's a reason why a lot of these bodybuilding competitions don't actually test for steroids. Basically, yeah, you shouldn't take any steroids. Also, we're not going to ask you if you do. It's just one of those things where it's like, okay, either you're against it or you're not. And the truth is that behind the scenes, Rich quickly realized that if he was going to win at all, he had to do the roids. Pretty much everyone else was doing them. His first outing with them was known as the Test and Deca route, which combines testosterone and decadurabolin, an anabolic steroid. He would later say that he loved the dramatic results he got because they did in fact cause him to balloon in size when it came to muscle mass, but this would result in a bit of an addiction. He wanted to get bigger, better, powerful. But over time, steroids had a lot of side effects, bad ones, and he knew he likely shortened his life because of using them. During the influencing part of his career, he always explained that, yeah, you really shouldn't take these. You're only hurting your body and you're hurting yourself. While he endeared himself to the public, some in the bodybuilding scene didn't like the fact that he was going this route. By admitting that he had to use them, and explaining that it was normal in the bodybuilding community. He was kind of outing them as being somewhat fraudulent, because in professional sports, steroid use is actually banned, legitimately. They do test for it, because it's considered cheating. Not so with bodybuilding, though. And it's one of those things that should probably be cracked down on. From a personal perspective, Rich felt that steroid use probably shouldn't be made illegal, because that only caused people to talk about it more, and kids would be therefore attracted to doing it. He felt it should be discouraged, and that minors should never ever do it. But if you were an adult, and you were well aware of the consequences, then he didn't think there should be a legal recourse to stopping you, as long as you knew what you were getting yourself into. He was so focused on competing on the stage that he wanted to make sure that he had a real chance of winning. And he did a few times, but not to the point where he was able to make it a long-term career path. Especially since, over time, the steroids were wearing on him, and he knew it. Up to and including signs of liver toxicity. This was bad, obviously. So, instead of continuing down the professional bodybuilding route, he took his unusual physique online, and combined with his extroverted personality and down-to-earth tone, he wound up generating a significant following. The thing was, Rich always pushed genuine advice, real advice for fellow bodybuilders, or people just wanting to stay in shape. When it came to the steroids, he explained that while, yes, they would give you more size, they wouldn't give you more efficiency. He said he knew guys that were physically smaller than him that could definitely beat him in an arm wrestling competition, for example, because they had done it the natural way. Their muscles were way more efficient than his were, because they weren't boosted. In that way, he was promoting the idea of getting big naturally, if that's what you really wanted to do. It would take hard work, but not only would you get better results, but you would be healthier. He also called out the supplement industry, something his own 5% nutrition was a part of. As a bodybuilder, of course, he knew plenty about these supplements, these protein supplements, things like that promised you great results, turning you into the Incredible Hulk, yeah! But Rich made it clear that that was all a load of crap, frankly. The supplements generally did nothing different that regular food consumption wouldn't do. He recommended, instead, to actually just, eat. Chicken, potatoes, yams, broccoli, things like that. Meal prep was the best advice he could give, but didn't he have his own supplement line? And yes, 5% nutrition. But within his branding, he explained that all it was doing was adding on to the food you should be eating. He maintained that his products were a supplement, not a replacement. And no, they would not magically turn you into, say, him. But it was because of his honesty that made the 5% nutrition brand sell. Because he was upfront about what it would actually do, and it wasn't necessarily, magic. People were perfectly willing to buy from Rich, rather than the rest of the alarmingly unregulated supplement industry that had been effectively lying to them in many cases, promising all these great results when in reality most of them were pretty much the exact same thing, some version of protein. And yeah, protein powder can help, but you know what else can? Fish and chicken, other light meats. There are other ways to do that don't involve spending $50 on a tub of protein powder. Granted, not everyone liked Rich, because some found him just a bit obnoxious and arrogant. And yeah, maybe he was a little bit arrogant, but he never threw that in anybody's face. He was proud of himself, he was proud of what he had accomplished, he was proud to be himself, but he never said, "I'm better than you," or anything like that. He was just larger than life. He had that kind of personality. Not everyone liked it, but most did. And many got on this case about the steroid use, but it was always kind of one of those criticisms that fell on deaf ears because he had never lied about it. Because he was upfront and honest about the whole thing from the start, there was no major controversy. Had he started things out and said, "Yeah, I totally got this way naturally," that would have been an entirely different situation. But he never did that. It was his upfront realness that made people like him, and he saw quite a bit of success generally when it came to his online following, whether it be Instagram or YouTube. His personal life wasn't quite as perfect, but he was also honest about that too. Piana was married twice. His first marriage didn't last very long. It ended in divorce after he had an affair. He's the one that messed up there. Though from what I understand, it happened before he was online, and he was upfront about it, explaining how that was a mistake. Over the years, he did have a few girlfriends, though the two we want to focus on are Chanel Johnson and Sarah, Heimisdottir? She's Icelandic. I don't know how to read that. We'll just call her Sarah. Now, Chanel was an on-again, off-again relationship that he had. They went back and forth. They would be together, then they wouldn't be, then they would be together, then they wouldn't be. But during one of the times where they weren't together, Rich met Sarah, and it was Sarah that he wound up marrying, making it his second marriage. This one didn't last long either, but in this case it wasn't Rich's fault. Like I said, Sarah was from Iceland. He married her in 2015, but they were separated by 2016. Because, over time, Rich became suspicious that, she was kind of just using him for a lot of things. He was very wealthy by this point, and she had a significantly awful drug habit involving methamphetamine. Not only did he find out that she was straight up stealing money from him in order to fund her drug habit, but he also accused her of cheating on him with basically everyone in their bodybuilding circle, and the only reason she had married him in the first place is because he was willing to, so she could get a green card and stay in the United States. She also attempted to get people on her side by recording Rich without his knowledge during a fight they were having. And I'm not going to play the audio here because A, it was recorded without his knowledge, and that's kind of scummy, and B, he swears a lot during it. Rich did have a habit of doing that in his videos in general, in case you go watch them, just so we're clear. But he's genuinely mad. But the thing about the recording is, while he did say some pretty awful things to her, this is after he found out that she had been using him and stealing from him. He had sunk possibly even millions of dollars into this relationship, only for her to steal from him for drugs and cheat on him. Yeah, of course he's mad! And Rich is a big guy, and he had gone on record about the effects of things like roid rage, how it turned him into, frankly, kind of an impatient jerk. But at no point during his entire rant, as angry as he is, did he lay hands on her. Instead, he took the legal route. They got an annulment, and after it was all done, he went public with what had exactly happened, and was really down to earth and honest about how things had played out. Truthfully, I think it's actually one of the best things he ever did. Not the marriage, obviously that was a complete mistake and it cost him a lot of money. He was taken advantage of. It's the fact that he was honest about this mistake, and he was vulnerable. By all accounts, he loved Sarah. He really thought that they had something special, and that they were in it for the long haul. And she had shattered that vision. For him, a big, muscular, manly man, to come out in front of millions to explain what had happened, explaining how it made him feel, that's huge. A common stereotype among big, muscular dudes is that they aren't allowed to be vulnerable. They aren't allowed to be seen as weak or emotional. Rich, on the other hand, did that, and his followers quickly sent well wishes and thanked him for being so transparent about what had gone down. It was probably a lot easier because in the end, like I said, he never laid hands on her, and she had stolen from him and used him. By nearly everyone's analysis, she was wrong in pretty much every conceivable way. There was really no reason not to take Rich's side. Not long after the annulment, Rich would explain that he had gotten back with Chanel. And the thing about Chanel is that, well, to be honest, pretty much everyone liked Chanel. She was down to earth like Rich was. Still pretty skinny and blonde, but when you saw the videos they made together, it didn't seem like she was putting on an act. You could tell that not only did she care about Rich to a significant degree, but that she actually wanted to be around him. Whereas in retrospect with Sarah, you can kind of see how she might have been faking some of that endearment. Chanel didn't seem to have to fake anything. They were a good match, and they stayed together until August 7th, 2017. On that day, at about 1:30 p.m., Rich Piana would collapse at home in Clearwater, Florida. Chanel had been giving him a haircut at the time, and she immediately called 911 and followed the operator's instructions to attempt CPR until paramedics got there, about 10 minutes later. By the time they got there, they confirmed that Rich's heart wasn't beating regularly. They managed to stabilize him, but it was long enough that they thought he might have suffered brain damage from a lack of oxygen. He was quickly rushed to the hospital and put in a medically induced coma in an attempt to reduce the swelling on his brain. Chanel would later say that in the few days prior to his collapse, Rich had some odd symptoms like shortness of breath and even nausea. She didn't know it at the time, but doctors explained that those could have been warning signs of a future cardiac arrest. He was also still on roids at the time. 20 bottles of testosterone were found in his home, and despite doctors' best efforts, Rich Piana died on August 25th at the age of 46. The following autopsy showed that his heart was suffering from significant disease. Both it and his liver weighed twice the average amount for an adult male. This enlargement is a known side effect of the roids, as well as the hormones he was taking. The exact cause and manner of his death was eventually deemed inconclusive. They never did a toxicology analysis, because apparently the hospital had discarded the specimens needed for that. This little whoopsie-daisy has led to numerous conspiracy theories regarding the death of Rich Piana. Some argue that he was intentionally killed and it was covered up, but you mean to tell me that all these hospital staff knew about it and what? They were paid off by who? For what? It doesn't make any sense. Some even suggested Chanel had something to do with it, but they weren't even married. It's not like she stood to get a whole lot of money in some kind of inheritance as the surviving spouse. I really don't think there was anything truly sinister going on, because frankly, given his state, this was probably inevitable. Everyone knew, because he told us that he had used steroids pretty consistently for decades. This was an inevitability, and he knew it. That's why he always explained that you have to know the risks involved. He knew those risks, took them, and in the end, he paid for them. It's sad, and many still mourn his loss, because he was such a unique character. You don't get the kind of down-to-earth honesty from a person like Rich every single day. His videos still remain up on his YouTube channel, and if you go, you can see many returning to hear his words of wisdom yet again, because that's the kind of effect he had on people. People always wanted to hear what Rich had to say about everything. He's like that one bro you might have known in college. You weren't necessarily close, but you sat down and had a beer with him on occasion, and he was always a good time. The difference is that Rich Piana was everyone's bro. After he was gone, everyone that knew him said he was just a really nice guy. Was he flawed? Yeah. But he owned his flaws, and worked hard, not just to be an absolute tank of a human being, but also to be a better one. Some have pointed out that the last few videos he made before his death, he did seem genuinely happy. Probably because him and Chanel were actually really getting along. And while Rich was certainly taken from this world too soon, it's nice to know that he spent his final days enjoying life with the person he loved. It's not something everyone gets, but Rich got it, and he deserved it.
And I hope everyone out there is doing as great as I am. So anyway, guys, I'll talk to you later.
And with that, a special thank you go to all my underwater train finders, Some Dude 267, Benjamin Owens, Anzac A1, Arthur Roy, Jack Carson's Rotor Videos, Lord Off 444, iSurfer 1405, Charles Kwiatkowski, Matt Weaver, Tom Red Lion, NS Productions 8104, Wheeljack 8401, Rescues Greyhounds, Love Baxter, Caleb Crosswhite, Josh Johnson, Caleb Raid Waters, Perez Drenton, Master of None, Travis Dolinsky, JBL Explorers, Tommy Rossini, Ben McCullough, Panzer Kitsune 131-232, Mark Holding, Mr. Terevel, Hayden DeGrow, Bad Train Puns Are Best, Kurt Forkum, Harry, Drew Debris, George Kenny, Kevin Wood, Hendrick Motorsports Fan 5, Hannah Bird, Duraushi, A Person 723, William Nemo, Dr. Racer 78, Shimasu, Metal for Life Guy, Andrew Bowen, Crimson Rose, Ryan Wehofer, Zintac M, Boss K, Orange Glass, Andy, The Conceptualist, Ohio Trucker 1, Windy City Rails, John Videola, AET Museum, Extra Special J, DFL Church, Murder Drone Stall, Bob Kondirk, Your Mom Liked It, Jared Brussel, Caden Alvey, Levi Anderson, Darrell Williams, Liam Wright, DE Ultra, Mr. Sleepy, NJ1969, Acolyte, Jonathan Coco, John, Connor Hahn, and of course, my dad. Till next time, this is Darkness and Individual of Fun. Farewell.